So Rachel, thank you again for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. As mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about vocational rehabilitation services in high school, which is one of my focuses at DLCV. So let's start with what vocational rehabilitation services actually are. Vocational rehabilitation services are services that might be useful to you to support you if you have a disability that limits you in keeping, or advancing in your job. So VR, or vocational rehabilitation services, are typically provided by the Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services, DARS, or the Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired, DBVI. So what types of services are available for high school students? Well, many of you may be aware that at the age of 14, a student will be eligible for what's called pre-employment transition services, or we call them PREATs. Those can include 5 core services, and on the next few slides, I'm going to be going over what each of those services might entail. But those 5 core services are job exploration counseling, work-based learning experiences, counseling on training and educational options, workplace readiness training, and also instruction in self-advocacy. So let's start with job exploration counseling. DARS or DBVI can work with a student and their families to look at what careers they may be interested in. This can be done in lots of different ways. It can be done orally, it can be done with a written career interest inventory, or it can also be done with a picture inventory if a student has more difficulty reading. This can be really useful if a student doesn't know what type of career they want to go into, or if they're interested in a whole lot of different things and want to see what career options are. So the second one is work-based learning experiences, or as we call them, trial work experiences, TWEs. The counselor can take a student to different workplaces so that they can learn skills for that workplace. For example, if they want to go into a retail environment, a counselor can take that student into the retail environment so that they can start seeing what daily life is like in that job. They can start learning skills on the job that will support them in the work environment. The third one is counseling and educational options. When I talk about this service with high school students, many think that it only means if they're interested in a 4-year college, and that's not the case. DARS can work with the family and the student to see what education options are the best fit for that student. This can include vocational school, community college, 4-year college, or even education after college. The next skill is workplace readiness training. This can include learning skills like resume writing, social skills, interview skills, and all sorts of other skills that are necessary in the work environment. Finally, there's instruction in self-advocacy. We all know that self-advocacy is learning to advocate for yourself, and if you are a student in high school, your PREATS counselor can help you learn how to advocate for yourself best in the community and in work settings. For example, they can teach you about how to advocate for yourself when you're asking for accommodations at work or in school. So when can you start receiving VR services? Well, we mentioned that you can start receiving PREATS services at the age of 14. But we also recommend that as soon as possible, you ask your DARS counselor or your DBVI counselor to help you fill out an application for services after high school. It's important to get that process started early. So another type of support that VR can sometimes provide is assistive technology. When we talk about assistive technology, we mean anything that can help an individual throughout their daily life. This can be bought off the shelf, it can be customized to the individual, can be high tech, or it can be low tech. Keep in mind that as you're leaving high school, if the school has provided you assistive technology, the school then keeps that assistive technology when you graduate. So we recommend as early as possible, you start talking with DARS or DBVI about assistive technology. Sometimes DARS or DBVI can assist in paying for assistive technology like iPads, like reading software or screen readers, laptops, or accessible books and materials. But we want you to keep in mind that these services can only be provided if it relates to the employment goal, or also you also have to meet eligibility criteria to be eligible to receive assistive technology. So there's lots of services that DARS or DBVI may be able to help with. Some of the VR services include, but are not limited to, job coaching, assistance with interview skills and job searching, assistance in teaching skills necessary for specific careers, transportation to and from work, and other work-related expenses, sometimes including interview attire or sometimes benefits analysis, if you receive benefits, looking at how working may affect those benefits. So how do you know if you're eligible for VR services? If you have a disability, you are eligible for VR services, and you should definitely get in touch with your local DARS or DBVI office to look into getting those services. So if you are interested, you can contact DARS at 804-662-7000 or toll free at 800-552-5019. If you are blind or you have a vision impairment, you can call DBVI at 804-371-3151 or toll free at 800-622-2155. So if you are receiving services and you're having an issue receiving those services, you can call the Disability Law Center at 804-225-2042 or 1-800-552-3962, Mondays, Wednesdays, or Fridays from 8:30 a.m. until 4 p.m. You can also reach out to us online on our Get Help portal at www.dlcv.org/gethelp. And we have a client assistance program that helps us to advocate for Virginians who have disabilities and are either not receiving VR services or are not happy with the VR services that they are currently receiving. So with that, I appreciate your attention, and if you guys have any questions, I would be glad to answer what I can. Thank you.
Great information. Thank you, Rachel. Again, guys, if you have specific questions for Rachel about VR services for your high school student, go ahead and put that in the chat box. Rachel, we have a question right now.
Go ahead and stop. I'm going to go ahead and stop share.
Okay.
Sure.
Someone has asked, sorry, let me get it back up there. Someone has asked about the age for services. It said that you said it started at age 14, and they want to know, is there an end age?
Usually 21 or when they finish high school.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, well, hold on just a second and see if there's any additional questions.
Okay.
Okay, someone has asked, yes, here comes some questions. Someone has asked, can you receive funding for apprenticeships through DARS?
I believe you can. I think that could be an example of a trial work experience. If you are receiving services from DARS, speak with your job counselor if that's something that you're interested in.
Okay. And someone wants to know, how are VR services affected when schools are not meeting in person? How have you guys seen that looking so far?
Great question. It's important to understand that even though schools are not meeting in person right now, VR services are still happening. Most of the VR services are doing their services virtually. If you are receiving services from DARS or DBVI and are having issues with that, you can definitely call Disability Law Center, excuse me, Disability Law Center of Virginia, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 8:30 to 4.
Okay. And could you restate who do they contact to get VR services?
If you are blind, you can, or have a vision impairment, you can call DBVI. If you are not blind, you can call the Department for Aging and Rehab Services, DARS.
Okay. And so there's a couple of questions about IEPs and VR
Okay.
services
Sure.
being included. I can address that as well, but do you want to share something there about VR services within IEPs?
We encourage transition planning to start as early as possible. If you are in an IEP meeting and think that DARS is good support for you, definitely talk with your IEP team about DARS or DBVI and how to get them involved.
Exactly. And those, as Rachel shared, those folks can be a part of IEP team meetings, and schools can help families connect to those services. And the pre-ET services specifically are done in conjunction with the school. So it's really important to talk to your school IEP team about those things. However, you as a parent or as an individual may also contact DARS directly. Trying to read through questions. Let's see.
I see one about virtual pre-ETs.
Yes.
We don't offer pre-ETs as DLCV. We advocate for students to receive pre-ETs through VR. But if you have a student that's eligible for pre-ETs that is not receiving services or pre-ETs right now, give us a call, please. We can sometimes advocate for pre-ETs to continue even though school is virtual.
Correct. And again, I know Rachel talked about qualifications. The pre-ETs, if your individual is in school and has a disability, that's a qualification for pre-ETs. VR services does have some qualifications around it, and sometimes a waiting list as well. So those are important to know about.
And I'm seeing one about what is pre-ETs. Pre-ETs is pre-employment transition services. And those are those 5 core services that we were talking about that our students ages 14 and up are eligible for.
Good. Someone's asking a question about the delayed status or the waiting list around.
Is that order selection?
Order selection, yes.
So order of selection is a system that DARS sometimes uses. If you have questions individually about order of selection, please reach out to Disability Law Center of Virginia, and we can sometimes answer questions related to that.
Correct. It's in general, the order of selection has to do with the level of support, as Rachel said, is needed, and students or individuals with the most significant needs get served first. And if the services are on a waiting list, that would go down at that point. One of the things I will recommend as well, as I'm seeing a lot of questions on here about school and DARS and transition planning, is one thing that PTSI has out available is something called Transition University, which talks about all kinds of aspects around transition. And I would encourage you to check into that. It is a free 5-week online course, which is self-paced, so you don't have to be on at a specific time. And it will answer a lot of questions, get a lot more in depth about some of the things that I see being asked about transition IEPs and things. Someone's asking, does VR services and pre-ET services apply to students with autism?
Absolutely. If they have any type of disability, they are eligible for VR services.
Okay, let's see if there's a lot of questions. We're trying to scroll through those as fast as we can.
I'm seeing one about it. How do they know who their representative is?
Oh, good question.
That's a great question. Sometimes you can call the number for DARS to figure out who the representative is for your school. And I see in that question sometimes DARS isn't offered until the final year, and it should be offered much, much earlier than that. So definitely call the 800 number for DARS and talk with your IEP team about incorporating DARS into the transition planning process.
Exactly. Again, the pre-ET services, the pre-employment transition services start at age 14 or can start at age 14. So, which is when in Virginia transition planning starts on IEPs, is
Right.
at least by age 14. So that is something to be aware of and to be talking to your IEP team about.
And that assistive technology information that we talked about is not usually considered part of transition planning, but it's really important to have that discussion and start that discussion early.
Okay, someone's asking about summer jobs and DARS support during that time. I will say, of course, everybody is aware that we are in some really unusual times right now with jobs as a whole. There are a whole lot of people in the world that are not able to get to their job right now or able to work. And so summer jobs may be a little difficult this summer, depending on, the situation that our world finds itself in. However, if you are looking for summer jobs or you're looking for support, again, it is really important to make that call to your local DARS office and let them know that. And if you're
And
struggling and you feel like something is not correct, or you feel like legally something may have not been handled correctly, that's where the Disability Law Center can really help answer your questions around that.
right. And if you call Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 8:30 to 4, and you can speak with an advocate who may be able to assist you.
Okay. Rachel, I'm going to stop right here.
Okay.
And I know there may be a few questions we did not get answered, but again, we're going to email you the PowerPoint. And yes, Terry, DARS staff are currently working. The offices are closed, but the staff is still working. So you can make those phone calls. We will be emailing you this PowerPoint. You will have my email, and you will have Rachel's contact, as well as the DBVI and the DARS contacts. So do follow up if you have questions that we did not answer, or if questions come to mind after seeing that, and we would be glad to help answer you. Thanks so much, Rachel, for your time today. We really appreciate it. Great information.
Thank you.
Right. Everybody have a great afternoon.